Hi guys, welcome back to Russian Libertas Corpus YouTube channel. Sorry, it's been a while. As you can guess, it was a busy summer for me and Gala. And again, I remind you, this is the channel where we talk about Russian politics, society, and other things connected to Russia nowadays, and sometimes about Russian history too. And accidentally, well, not accidentally, because we picked this topic. We're going to talk about Russian history today through the lens of new concept of Russian history that's been taught in Russian schools and universities. So the today's Russian government version of Russian history, which is now is going to be indoctrinated into the minds of Russian youth. So right now, this summer, the new program for the new course for freshman students of the colleges and universities was released, and it's kind of a very, I would say, like swampy in terms of like very like amorphic attempt to present Russian ideology to to students. The problem is there is no such thing as Russian ideology as classic ideology, structurized with the idea of the future, the path to this future, and like methods, values, all that. It's just kind of a very weird compilation of different ideas that whoever is responsible for that in the presidential administration think is applicable in this situation, basically justifying the war as the result. Like we participating in this war, we started this war because of ... and there is like whatever values they want to shove into that. So that's the course for students. And last week, new high school textbook, history textbook, was released with modern Russian history starting right after World War II until the present. After the war started, they, I would say, like speed up this process. And now in the summer of 2023, we have this like broad variety targeting students, first year students, and high school students. So basically, again, if we're talking about boys, we're talking about people who right now considered to be, cannon fodder for the war. So they kind of need to give them some idea why they might be sent to the Ukraine to kill and to die, essentially. So they released this textbook, and just a few examples. If you can, as you can imagine, the main point of last 20 years of Russian history, it's glorifying Putin. It's very basically you can just check out some Russian propaganda nowadays, and that's going to be the content of this a so-called history textbook. The thing that exists in this textbook and generally in those recent historic views of Putin and Putin's elite, that everything that they don't like, whether it be protests in Russia or independent politics and policies of neighboring countries, if they don't like it, this is all result of some Western secret services, spy games, money from Department of State from Washington, D.C., kind of conspirological layer and explanation for anything that goes wrong. The same way, the big moments in the histories of Eastern Europe countries, so-called Warsaw Pact countries, such as Hungarian Rebellion of 1956 or Prague Spring of 1968, also framed as inspired and initiated by some sort of a spy play and like a invisible intervention of the West, completely disregarding the will of people from Hungary or Czechoslovakia at the time, that they wanted, something changed. They didn't really like this idea of socialism and communism that Soviet Union was imposing on them. So anyway, that's a little, probably not that little, excursus into the topic of indoctrination of Russian children with, well, I would just say some bullshit that really serves the interests of Russian elite today. If we have, like, in 10 years, for example, if it will last for 10 years, which is like pretty horrible to think about, might we end up with a situation when the next generation of Russian kids will have like pretty messed up views of Russian history and world history, essentially, and very disturbed understanding of the world as it is today?
So this is very interesting question. Like, for how long can we not observe any results? I think that for a while we will not observe any results out of this situation, because the kids that are consuming this information for now are still not capable enough to employ their knowledge or skills, whatever they gather in their early elementary school or mid school or high school, in the nearest future. So possibly there will be some counter effect with from communication with their families, if the families are insane mind. But if not, then I'm afraid there is no way we can cancel the effect that these kids are facing right now. I will explain a bit why. In this early stage of development, whatever the kid is encountering from the person of authority, which the school and the teacher is for this person, for this little kid, even though even if the parents will counterbalance this narrative, even so, they will still understand that their families are out of the public discourse. They will have it subconsciously. And even if the system will provide them with any alternative way for a scenario for development, I'm afraid it will backfire in their country when they're grown up already. Just like it happened with our parents, Alex. They were exposed to Soviet narrative and Soviet discourse in their early stage. Then they were the majority of their lifetime when they were thriving, when they were young and actually, capable. They were introduced to perestroika, so the biggest part of their life was out of it. It was during the Russian Federation time. Yet, what you can observe now is that these people in their 50s and 60s are the most Lucifers from, according to the surveys. They are the most cruel. They are the most blood hungry, because they were, as kids, they were exposed to a certain narrative that celebrated oppression and introduced oppression as order. I think these kids are going to encounter a great cognitive dissonance Why? Because unlike our parents who were brought up in the system of Soviet Union with a limited access to information, these kids will have this access to external information sources, internet, YouTube videos, like whatever. They are going to encounter this narrative, and the way they will systemize this in their brain, like how do I position myself in this conflict? They at some point they will realize that the narrative provided to them from within the country is to a great extent contradicts the external narrative. They will understand that it's in a conflict. They will understand how they are situated in the world system, and then from there they will take the decision how to approach this. Will they take the defensive stance, like me against the world, or they will realize that something is going on inside here, and we have to we have to counteract it. But whatever they choose, the foundation for this will be what they are given in the childhood. For me, it's like I'm against Soviet Union just because I was brought up in this narrative, but I'm still positioning myself to this narrative. This is my pivotal point. This is my foundation. I can't debate it. I can't debunk it. I can't dismantle it. I can't agree with it, but it's it. This is it. Like, this is the center of my universe. And unfortunately, these kids are going to face this as well, because you cannot cancel the effect of whatever they grasp during this very important lifetime and these development stages. This is my opinion as in terms of pedagogical stance of this issue.
Right, but like in terms of so let's take three possible scenarios, like very optimistic and probably non-realistic, that Putin's regime will end within, let's say, next 1 to 3 years, right? Then the next one is going to last 5 to 10 more years, and then very sad one is going to last more than 10 years. Is it going to be the same effect in all three of these like possible scenarios? Or let's say if the Putin's regime will end in the next, like 3 years, then, it's going to be salvageable in terms of like, okay, that was wrong. Kids, don't listen to that. That was bullshit. Let's do, normal history and normal values now.
I mean, just like with the radioactive substances and, effect, the longer you are the subject to it, the more damaged you get, of course. Like if you are exposed to this kind of brainwashing for 10 years, you're going to be much solid in the belief of this is to be true than if it's 2 or 3 years, of course. First thing. Second thing, of course, if the regime is that solid to survive 10 years, then probably it's going to provide more reasons for people to think it has the right to be solid, and we are correct in our beliefs, because why are we still existing? Why are we still this way? Right? So it's just a confirmation bias.
Probably the last question. You still work with students and school students from Russia who want to, go to study abroad, right? So in your opinion, can you like trace the dynamic of their, not values? And again, I understand that people who want to study abroad probably not very, pro-Putin in the first place. But have you noticed maybe any, shifts in their, like understanding of the reality that might signify that something is changing already, or not yet?
It depends. When we're talking about kids of like 20 years that are looking at master degrees and PhD degrees, they're pretty aware of what is happening, and they understand that if they want to continue their career, they want to continue their education, Russian diploma Russian educational records will not be valid around the world no longer because Russia is going out of Bolognian system, the educational system that unites the world and unites the international science. Science is an international kind of substance. You cannot isolate it to the national boundaries because it's a different country. It's a country of letters and ideas. It's not about people. And what Russia is doing right now, it's limiting. It cancels itself from this country. They're no longer citizens of international scientific country, and that means that they're depriving themselves from progress. And kids who understand that, the grown-ups, they surely want to leave the country for good, to just have the opportunity to develop. Other kids, like young kids, they're for the most part they're more intuitive. They are all about TikTok and Instagram, and when they understand that these resources are getting prohibited and forbidden, they kind of understand that something is going on, something is up. They are not particularly sure what it is, but they understand it's not good because they feel like they're outsiders now and not by choice. So what I would say is that there's definitely more fear those people who wanted just to try themselves, in their abroad educational system, but they fear for this, like the obstacles. Now they feel like, no, there's no way, there's no chance. I'm giving up. I'm staying here. Russians are not needed anywhere. I'm like, this is it. Like, I give up this idea. But then there are other people who did not consider anything abroad. They just wanted to develop their education. They just wanted to grow. And they understand now that they need to leave. So a lot of segments among these young people have switched. You know what I mean? Like, people who never thought of it started thinking of it, and people who thought of it started, giving up on this idea. It's very interesting to observe. It becomes harder and harder, but at the same time, people are more determined than before. Also, it's not easy for Russian students to receive student visa. It's much harder because American embassies are much more detailed and precise in studying their cases.
Right.
So that's also more difficult, but it doesn't mean that the desire is less.
Right. So it's still possible. I mean, if people have the will and a lot of luck, I'm guessing it's still possible for, let's say, to start the next semester, which, this fall, somewhere else, not in Russia. Is it still doable?
Still possible? On the end of the receiving countries, it's kind of a welcoming environment, but on the end of the governments, there are obstacles.
Right. I kind of want to have something, I don't know, optimistic in the end, which in a way, this is optimistic, I guess, that it's, still possible. And there are still people who want to, get an proper education, even if their country wants to shove the tons of bullshit on their heads. Because my end up thing was, again, comparing to Nazi Germany, which is like not very optimistic because they had only 12 years of, Hitler, and the process of like getting back to the normal state was like decades until they like fully were free of all that indoctrination that happened only in the short period of time, which is not optimistic. Hopefully in 21st century it's going to be faster, if anything.
I hope so, Alex.
Yeah. All right, guys. So let us know, what do you think What do you think about indoctrinating kids? I guess let us know in the comments. Maybe you have some questions about Russia. And from now on, I really hope we'll get back on weekly videos, at least on the subject. We have a lot of interesting stuff that needs a lot of time to make. So hopefully we'll get to that point. So for now,
Bye
bye.
bye.